So what is up, guys? Nick here, helping you to master your technology. Is the iPhone 6 Plus worth it now? We're at about July 2018, and this phone has an attractive price point right now, as you can find it in a lot of places at under, $200, around $200. And getting an Apple product at that price point with this size of a display is kind of unheard of. So it can be attractive options for those of you who are looking for a very cheap device. But there are some really big drawbacks with the 6 Plus that might make it worth a skip here in 2018, at least at this current point in time. Let's go ahead and begin with the key specifications. I just want to refresh some of these so we can get an idea of what this 2014 phone had to offer. 5.5-inch 1920 by 1080. This is a full HD panel, and it can go sideways, so it's like a little mini tablet. If we go turn it to the side, you can see right there a little bit of lag there. We are on iOS 12, 1 GB of RAM and an Apple A8 CPU. This has packed in a 2915 milliamp hour battery, 8 megapixel 1080p camera. This cannot do 4K, and the front camera on this device is actually 1.2 megapixels, so it's the same one that you could find kind of like in the iPhone SE, and it only does 720/30, so it's not a great front-facing camera on this phone right here. So that's a quick refresh of the specifications. Apple A8, 1 gig of RAM are the real things that really power the show here for the iPhone 6 Plus. So let's talk about the body and the build. This is that iPhone that is notorious for the bend gate, the unbox therapy video where it was like bent almost in half. And if you actually bend this, you can feel it flex a little bit. It's not that sturdy feeling like the iPhone 6s or the 7 Plus or the iPhone 8 Plus. It's now the most current Plus edition. But at the same time, if you're not going to be bending your phone, which I don't know why you would, it's a pretty nice design. It has a pretty thin 7.1 millimeter side here, and some people might not like these antenna lines, but you do have a nice aluminum casing on the rear. It is 6000 series aluminum, so that's kind of like what you get in budget devices. And this phone definitely feels budget here in 2018. It doesn't feel like a flagship phone anymore, as to be expected. Is 4 years old, but 7000 series aluminum doesn't really feel any different. It just feels thicker and more sturdy. In terms of like the actual feel on the hand, it's about the same. So it's still good. Most budget phones now can do aluminum, like the Honor series, but this is still pretty decent here in terms of the feel in hand. It doesn't feel ultra premium like some glass phones do feel, but it still has aluminum, so it doesn't feel like a super cheap phone either. In terms of its weight, 172 grams, so that's actually quite light for this size of a body. And the iPhones just kind of got a little heavier as the Plus series advanced. They got a little heavier, more durable, all the way up to 202 grams now on the 8 Plus. So this is pretty light for a Plus device here. So if you like that, you will like the light and feel of the iPhone 6 Plus. Overall, at $200, it feels just like one of those Honor 7X phones. It feels like a Huawei Mate SE. That's how this phone feels, and those phones don't feel cheap either. So it's definitely not at your ultra premium level, but the body for $200 is still, it's not bad overall. I mean, at 600 I'd be like no, but at 200 it's okay. Okay, so let's discuss that display. So again, Retina display, this really hasn't changed much over the years. So getting a 6 Plus now is not like you're getting any decrease in the display. 6S Plus has the 1080p display, so 401 pixels per inch, giving it a much sharper resolution than the smaller iPhone 6. So overall, I think this display, while it isn't quite as well calibrated as some of the newer ones, it has a more cooler tone. If you like a more bluish display, you will like the iPhone 6 Plus's display. It's definitely airs a little bluer than like the warmer color iPhone 6s Plus. So definitely a solid display. And in terms of this, we're in 2018 and a lot of phones are still coming out with 1080p panels like the OnePlus 6. So it's not behind really at all in display. In terms of display, you're getting a great one here with the 6 Plus still, even if you bought it now. Okay, so let's discuss the software a little bit. I am running iOS 12, the beta edition for developers, and it's running pretty good. Actually, a little bit snappier than iOS 11 in some cases, and I didn't update to beta 2 yet for this device. But overall, what's a good thing is that this phone is 4 years old and it's still getting a software update this year that's going to make it even faster. But when you're just on the home screens, you don't really feel too much of a difference from the newer iPhones. It's when you get into these third-party apps, the apps just take a while to load. With the Apple A8 CPU coupled with 1 gig of RAM, they just take longer than most of your newer phones, and you're going to be waiting a lot of times if you want to do some multitasking as well. So iOS, while you do have all the features of the newer iPhones here with a 6 Plus, where you really struggle here is performance. With the 1 gig of RAM, if we take a look, it doesn't even give you the full 1 gig of RAM. Let's look in Geekbench. You could see it sometimes hovers around 970, 980 megabytes available, which just is not going to keep up with the demands of 2018 if you are using your phone for more than just a basic phone, which is not enough RAM to keep up with how much we now do on our phones in the year of 2018. Okay, so discussing the battery life, this is an area of the 6 Plus, which is not that disappointing. I think it's not as efficient with its A8 CPU, but it's pretty decent battery life. You can get through most of the day. I don't think anymore a 6 Plus is going 2 full days like a 8 Plus would, even though it has the bigger battery. The newer software is just not as efficient on this older hardware, meaning that your battery drain is happening more frequently. But if you do have a horrible battery drain, you can take this into Apple and get it replaced. But overall, I think the battery with low power mode on is still sufficient enough on the 6 Plus to get through a full day quite comfortably. So battery life, I don't have too much of a problem with here on a 6 Plus. Okay, so discussing the camera, that is an 8 megapixel camera in the rear. It could shoot up to 1080 at 60 FPS. It can do, you know, like 720 on the front. And if we go into the settings, let's take a look at the other features we do get. So going down into camera, this also doesn't have that newer file format that's going to allow you to save more space on the device. But going over here, you could see you can do slow-mo at 720, no 1080 here like the newer iPhones. You can do 1080 at 60, so definitely in the budget territory here when it comes to what you can do with the camera. So that's the camera settings when it comes to the iPhone 6 Plus. The camera software itself is very similar to any other newer iPhone. We don't need to discuss that much, but instead of us talking about the camera, let's just take a look at some of the samples and you could judge for yourself if you think it's still worthy of your money in 2018. Discussing the audio, it's not the loudest audio you're gonna get on a phone, and it's a mono speaker, so you can easily cover it up there. And overall, it doesn't get very loud. Rather tinny actually here in comparison to the upgraded iPhones. So not a great audio experience, but unlike some of the newer iPhones, you do have one great thing, and that is a headphone jack. So you can plug in millions of different iPhone or headphones to this iPhone. So that kind of makes up for the lack of great external speakers. Discussing the call quality, it hasn't been fantastic for me in my use case, mostly due to having a weaker speaker. I like to do speakerphone calls and I can't hear people that well with this phone. Also, the earpiece is not quite as crisp as like an 8 Plus, for example. It shouldn't be. I mean, it should be improved. But this phone, if you were to make a phone call on a newer iPhone and then take a phone call on this one, it's drastically improved. But I'm not saying this phone can't make a phone call. And one thing that's been really good about this phone is the reception. So good reception. Overall, I think it's average phone call quality, just not great, but average phone call quality that will get the job done. So in conclusion, is the iPhone 6 Plus worth it here, worth your time to purchase here in late 2018? And my answer is no. And the reason why is because there are phones in this price range that have succeeded this phone or even better, like the Huawei Mate SE, for example, around the same price point, 4 gigs of RAM, same display like 1080p, and has a faster processor than this phone that's going to perform better. Now, if you want a cheap iPhone that's even faster than this phone, the iPhone SE is cheaper than this in most regards, especially if you get it on prepaid carriers. It's even faster than this device and has 4K recording capabilities. It's mostly the performance that upsets me here with the iPhone 6 Plus, but it doesn't really upset me in that it's an older phone, so to expect it to be slow. But if you're trying to buy one, I just can't sit up here and be dishonest and tell you this is worth it, because you're gonna get a phone that I really feel is gonna aggravate more people than make people happy. Anyway, will you buy an iPhone 6 Plus right now? Are you already doing it? Have you given it away? Have you upgraded? Or are you like, no way, never again with the 6 Plus? Let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section of this video. If you found this video helpful, enjoyable, entertaining, informing, do me a favor, click that like button for me. And if you're new here, consider subscribing for more. Nick here helping you to master your technology. Be sure to be well, and peace.